Today's topic is going to be a very interesting one, and it is about adult children and navigating all that comes with it. So feelings of guilt, people pleasing, how we learned it from childhood, and how we continue to allow it to impact us today. So buckle up because it's going to be a good one. Let's go. If you're watching this video and you're still here, it's probably because you can relate to some of the description of what we're going to talk about today. So if you are someone who has grown up people pleasing, wanting to do everything correctly, wanting to not disappoint anybody in your life, and you find yourself still doing that as an adult, then this one is for you. So let's start from the beginning of how this may happen or how this may develop. So as children, most times we end up getting a lot of our experiences, learned behaviors from our immediate connections, which tend to be our parents, our guardians, those people that we grew up with. So even if you grew up with your grandparents and not your parents, or if you were adopted, whoever your immediate connections were, those were the people and individuals that you learned the most from. And so we know from psychology and science and research that the first few years of our development are the most important, and that is where the critical things come up for us. When we're younger and developing, our brains are like sponges, I'm sure you've heard. But in that era, we end up soaking deeply a lot of the experiences that create our understandings of life and how to interact with others. However, as we get older, the sponge doesn't seem to suck in as much water or soap or whatever that's an analogy, but it doesn't seem to soak it up as much, right? Because we've already developed a lot of those characteristics. And so what happens is by a certain age, we tend to just be set in our ways, right? Have you ever heard anybody say, hey, no, they're old, they're set in their ways, there's no way they're going to change? That's part of it. But also it happens between, our 20s and up. So it's not just at an elderly age only. So that is kind of like the beginning in a quick nutshell about how it begins at child and adolescent stage, right? And so as adults, if you're in this pattern of like, listen, when the guilt comes up, it comes up and it impacts my decisions, the way I feel, and I do not know any other way. This is just how I operate and I'm stuck in this. This is the moment and the stage in which I would like to help you. So when we're looking at this and when we're realizing, okay, this is me, like you're calling me out, Dr. V, this is me, fine. There's no shame here. However, what we want to start to do is look at the specific areas in our lives and the certain individuals or connections that we've made that keeps us in this loop. And then we're going to look at ourselves internally, what we can do, because we always have a responsibility, right? So if we're looking at our outside connections, who is it, right? So for most people, it's your parents. Your parents are the reasons why you feel this need to do everything they say, live your life in a way that's going to make them happy, right? And if you make decisions for yourself and not because of your parents or what they believe you should do, then it really tends to impact how you feel. If you're finding yourself in that specific area or scenario, it's important to remember a few things. One, you and your decisions will always impact other people around you. And number two, you are also not responsible for anybody else's happiness but your own. And other people are only responsible for their own personal happiness. So let me give you an example. When we grow up, we have this thinking that, okay, this is my job, right? This is what I have to do. And part of that could be making my parents happy, making my guardians happy, making certain people happy and proud of me, right? If that's the case, then we end up structuring our lives, our decisions based off of that concept. So as long as they're happy, as long as they are not upset with me, as long as, I don't rock the boat, I'm good. So I'm going to make decisions based off of that. And that's fine because you get exactly what you're looking for, which is you don't rock the boat and they're happy with you and the decisions that you're making. The problem is we tend to lose ourselves because we're not making decisions that truly fulfill us and make us happy. And so when we recognize that, we have an option. We can either stop doing that or we can continue to do so. If you continue to do so, then you start to add reasonings or excuses as to why this is the right choice. So let's backtrack. For instance, let's say you're like, you know what? It's just more comfortable for me to not rock the boat. Let me just do what makes other people happy. So you look at your decision and you say, well, it's not that bad. Like, it's okay. It's not serious. I'm not unhappy, but I'm not happy, but I'm okay with that, right? As long as they're happy, I'm okay. Like, look at all the sacrifices they've made. This is the least I can do. Excuses, excuses, excuses to continue our patterns, right? And so if that's the case, if that's where you're finding yourself, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to kind of break that cycle, but not impossible. That's what I want to convey here. So now let's switch gears a little bit. If we're looking at how we grew up or our experiences early in life, you probably were made to feel as though this is your responsibility. You have to do this. If you do not take care of this in this way, it's a problem, right? And you grow up with the sense of anxiety, almost performance anxiety of I must, right? And that becomes strenuous and stressful to live life that way because you never get to a point where you fulfilled it, where, okay, this is done. I've helped this much and that's it. No, it's more like a continuous sacrificial effort of doing what they say, making sure they're good, checking their emotional state. Are they stressed out? Good, then you don't have to be stressed out. If they are stressed out, now you're stressed out, even though nothing in your life should be making you stressed, right? You go off of what they do. And so that's a really difficult cycle to be in, but you have to get to the point where you say, enough is enough. My happiness is dependent on me, and their own happiness is dependent on themselves. Because if you look at it from the outside perspective, they are living their lives based on the actions that you're taking. And that is very shaky because at any point in time, you can say, I don't want to live like this way anymore. And then what? Once you stop performing, then their mood changes. That's not healthy for them. And so they have to find ways to bring happiness and joy within their own lives. That's everyone's individual responsibility. So now I said we were going to turn it back onto you as well. So we talked about outside stressors, outside environments, their impact on us. Now let's talk about us and what we can do. So when you have these feelings of guilt that are really, really hard to come by, because if you've felt this, you know, it's like this sense of urgency, like I cannot not do this thing for them, or I cannot behave in this manner because then it will not be good for them, right? So for instance, I can't be happy about this or talk to them about this because I know maybe they're not in the best state. And so I don't want to make them sad because this is something to do with me. There's so many different examples, and I hope that some are coming to mind for you so that you can relate to this. But that's how it starts. So it's really, really hard, and I do recognize that, and I'm not trying to minimize it at all. I recognize that it's hard. As a first gen, as an older sibling, it is hard, okay? So what we have to do is look internally and say, okay, do I want to continue to live my life this way? If the answer is yes, then you're not there yet. That's all that means. You're not ready yet. And that is okay. If you're not ready yet, I do not want you to force yourself to do something that you're not ready to do, because guess what? You're going to be doing the same thing that you've been doing, right? Which is letting other people's moods and decisions and life choices impact you and what you do. And that's not okay. So if you're not ready, you're not ready. However, I would encourage you to continue watching this video, because when you are ready, at least you'll have some tools to help you. So if your answer is no, I don't want to continue to live life this way, I don't want it to continue to impact me in this way, congratulations. You've gotten to the first step of saying, I recognize that are things that I'm doing in the way that I'm living my life that is not for me, it is for other people. And this is very, very shaky, because when they're down, now I'm down. When they're up, I'm up. And that's just not a way to live life. That's actually what we term codependency. So what you want to do if you're ready to stop that cycle is, one, look at the influences around you and actually analyze how they've impacted you. You can do this through therapy. You can do this through journaling. And once you look internally and you're able to recognize these are the patterns that have impacted me the most, and this is how they have developed, then you've got to say, okay, where can I start to break the cycle? Because we have to look back and understand our history in order to understand what we're up against, so to speak, right? So if you've been doing this for 30 plus years, people pleasing, it's not going to take you 3 months to get over it. If it does, that's awesome. Even more power to you, but usually not, right? So you want to make sure you go into it knowing this is going to take time, this is going to take effort, and I'm going to have to be persistent in this. And so once you do that, then I want you to start with things that are least likely to rock the boat, right? So things that you're more comfortable with doing. Maybe that means saying no to that certain someone or individuals who usually call you to do this, do that, and the third, and you always say yes, even though you don't always have time for it or don't always want to. So it's about finding that balance, that sweet spot of, yes, I can help you. Yes, I can be there for you, but your emotional state, your well-being does not depend on me fully. I don't have that much control. You do, right? So find ways in which you can start to do that and implement them slowly but surely. Then once you get comfortable implementing those things, add more, right? Increase from there until you feel comfortable and keep going and keep going and keep going. I don't just want you to one day say, that's it, we're done, no more. No, I want you to go slow because that's going to be a shock to you. It's going to be a shock to them. Your guilt's going to go up and down and be all over the place. And then you're going to say, you know what, never mind. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm back. I'll keep doing the people pleasing. It's not going to work. It's like that diet that you do and you're like, I'm quitting everything, carbs, sugar, everything. And then 2 days later, you're like, give me all the carbs, give me all the sugar. That's what that's like. So I wouldn't recommend it. Then once you do that, I want you to actually work on your inner self. So that was the external factors. I want you to now work on your inner self. And this, you can do it through therapy. You can do it through taking time for you, right? Maybe going to yoga, maybe doing some art therapy, maybe doing something that doesn't even have to do with therapy. It could be trying new things that you like. If you enjoy cooking, doing that more. If you have kind of secluded yourself and haven't really had much social interaction, call up a friend that you love to talk to and just have some time on the phone with them. It could look so many different ways. Go to the beach if you can, go on a run, go on a walk, just making sure that you take time for you to put back into you. Because when we're people pleasers, we do things sometimes out of obligation, sometimes out of feeling guilty, right? And sometimes because just the person told you so and they've trained you in a way, I hate to say it that way, but they've trained you in a way where they call, you run. And you've trained yourself that way and you've allowed that to happen too. But we're turning a new leaf, right? And so we're trying not to do this anymore. Once you're doing that internal work and you're focusing on what you can do externally to help you, that's going to kickstart you into a place where you learn how to rewire your brain. And that is what we do a lot of times as therapists, right? We work with you to be able to learn, how do I change the processes, the mechanisms in my brain, the way they work, right? Because your brain connects 2 and 2 together, right? And it equals 4 for your brain, right? So when, let's say, for instance, my mom or my dad or my grandparents asked me for money for the 10th time, right? Instead of me saying, you know what, I already helped you out enough and I feel comfortable with the amount that I've helped you, I can't help you this time. Instead of saying that, if your brain is used to people pleasing, you're probably going to say, sure, no problem. Your bank may be at negative, but sure, no problem. I'll figure it out. You may not have enough money for a bill if you do this, but sure, I'll figure it out. That's the way your brain puts 2 + 2 = 4 together. What we're going to help you do, or if whichever therapist you work with, is going to help you learn that you don't always have to stick with 2 + 2. You can stick with 2 + 4. That equals 6, right? So let's say your grandparents, your parents ask you for money. You can say no. Or, I'm so sorry that you're in this situation. I really do feel for you. Everything in me does want to help you. However, at this moment, I cannot. Because if I do that, then I'm going to sacrifice my own bills, or I don't have any money to be able to give you at this point. And then allow them to figure out a solution to their problem. Don't always try to be the solution. And that's our problem. We think about all the things maybe they've done for us, or we think about the ways in which they've helped us, or we're just so used to giving that we're just like, I have to help. If I can help, I have to help. Not all the time. Not if it means pushing you to the point of exhaustion. Not if it means pushing you to the point of being financially struggling because you're too busy helping everybody else. But nobody can say no except for you. But you know what they will do? They will continue to knock. They will continue to ask. They will continue to bring it up because you haven't set a precedence of the line is right here and this is where it ends. And you cannot go past that line because that's my boundary. And it's okay to say that. And it doesn't mean that you're ungrateful. It doesn't mean that you don't feel guilty when you say no. It just means that you value your time, your space, and you more than putting yourself in a tight corner every single time somebody asks, hey, can you fill in the blank? So remember that out of all of these things that we've talked about today, until you're ready, it won't work because it won't be genuine for you. And even when you are ready, it won't be easy because if it were easy, everybody could just wake up and do it. It's not easy. It's got to be something that is done small efforts at a time on a consistent basis. And as you get comfortable, increase that. And then you will turn around and get to the point where you're like, ooh, man, I know how I started out life, people pleasing and being controlled by others and just feeling always guilty. And I could never have real joy or fun in my life because I would feel bad for being happy. To now this person who is able to find a healthy balance between helping those that love her or him and that have been there for him or her or they, and being able to say, you know what, now I have to pull away. Now I need to take some time to myself and recharge as a parent, as someone in the helping field, as someone who has their own bills to pay, as someone whoever you are, whatever situation you're in, everybody needs time to be able to unplug and recharge. And so you have to give yourself permission to do all of these things, and you have to be ready. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Come back next week for another amazing video.